Welcome back to another episode of the Splash City Basketball Podcast, your home for all things basketball in Minnesota, from high school to the pros. I am your host, Steve Hartman. There's been a lot of talk over the last few years about positionless basketball, and I believe some of that is just like finding new ways to score, being hard to guard, bringing more to your game, finding an advantage. And there's still some value in having positions. Certain players just better at bringing the ball up, initiating offense. Other players just need to be blocking shots, rebounding, obviously. And what makes players great at those positions is something I always find interesting. And so this is the first episode of 5 where I'm going to talk to different people about positions of basketball, what makes them great, and then the greatest players to play those positions. It's kind of the dog days of summer, so just going to start this new series here. And before we jump into today's discussion, if you are new to the podcast, feel free to subscribe, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. And then don't forget to hit us up on social media, Splash City Podcast or Splash City B-Ball Pod on TikTok. I am on TikTok now, yes. How exciting. So for the next 5 episodes, the blueprint's going to be what specific traits, what are the instincts, vision, leadership qualities that define that position, the 5 best players from Minnesota at that position, and then the all-time greatest at that position. Joining me today is one of my best friends, longtime friend, my teammate, my point guard in high school, Eric Quackenbush. We grew up on the court together, Eric. Eric, you were everything I could have asked for in a point guard, unselfish, tough, high IQ. You're a quiet leader, but never backed down from a taller player, which pretty much everyone was taller. No offense.
None taken.
And through the years, you and we've had a lot of great sports debates and discussions. So I wanted to bring you on to talk specifically today about point guards. Eric, welcome back. How have you been, man?
Appreciate you having me back on. Doing good up at the lake. Getting the quintessential Minnesota summertime in while we get the chance, and soaking in the rays and all the lake stuff happening.
Nice. Well, that is, Splash City Basketball Podcast,
right.
The Minnesota Basketball Podcast. You got to be at the lake, right?
Only fitting.
Sweet. Well, thanks for coming on. Obviously, there's a lot of things we can talk about with point guards. I wanted to quickly start off, though. The news broke this morning. It's August 11th, Tuesday, August 11th. The Wolves playing Christmas Day at home against the Thunder, and they open the season in Miami against Bam and Giannis. Are you excited for Wolves basketball? We got your point guard, LaMelo Ball, taking over.
Absolutely. Will be exciting. Nonetheless, we're going to put up points. Obviously, we keep Rudy to hold down the defense and give us a little bit of discipline. They're all in France right now. Must be taking, or they at least were in France. They've probably flown back. But taking some the veteran tips from Rudy, and we'll see how it rubs off. It's going to be an interesting combination. And yeah, if they get the Thunder Christmas Day, hopefully that's a matchup of 2 of the top teams in the West at the time.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the last time they hosted a game on Christmas Day, because it always feels like they're the road team. So that'll be kind of fun. A nice little Christmas present for everybody. You get through your Christmas gift opening and feasting, and then you park it on the Barca Lounger and just call it a night and watch some hoops.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it already.
Yeah. Well, we got a few months till we get there. And, in the spirit of LaMelo joining the Wolves, let's talk point guards. I kind of want to set the tone with kind of what makes a great point guard. Some of the characteristics, some of the things that they have to have. And it's, you and I were kind of talking earlier about how it's changed. The position changes a little bit over time, but you see some commonalities. Yeah. What do you think, what if you had to define the position, just from a definition, not the characteristics, but just define what a point guard should do for a basketball
the first
team?
thing you think about is getting a team into the offense and running the offense. When you talk point guard, somebody bringing the ball up the floor typically. And I think at least starting the offense. It doesn't have to revolve around them by any means. It depends upon your player. But generally, they're the ones that, a bit of a spark plug, or at least getting you into what what you're trying to accomplish offensively.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
obviously, it can vary quite a bit from teams and style of play.
yeah, and like the evolution of it, right? Like it's so much more scoring now than there ever was, which makes some of these
Yeah.
things hard, right? Like a point guard in the 60s obviously was asked to do a lot of different things, but I think you're probably right. Like the primary objective of the quote unquote point guard is to bring the ball up and get the team into some sort of offense. You and I were kind of talking about how like Michael Jordan and the Bulls didn't really have a great point guard, but like Steve Kerr was kind of that guy, Ron
Yeah.
Harper, BJ Armstrong. Then it ran through
Yeah,
Jordan,
Armstrong. Yep.
obviously, but they had point
Yep.
guards to get them into the triangle and get them moving. Um,
Yep.
what
And not
about
that you should just think offensively either, but I was gonna say if that's the same, if naturally the guy that's getting you into the offense should be the guy that's directing the defense, calling out the defense, having a little more responsibility with that. I would say that does tend to flow to a real defensive focused player, though, at the same time, too, which can be like a Rudy, a Giannis, somebody of that nature. On those teams, definitely is a little more of the tone setter on defense, you could say, or calling out the defense.
yeah, and
But
you know
didn't
the
want to leave
day
defense.
the days of like a point guard matching up with the other point guard seem to just not happen as much, but like, Stockton
Yeah.
versus Isaiah Thomas would be going head to head all game. There was no like, hey, we're gonna put Dennis
Yep.
Rodman on John Stockton. Like that just didn't happen as much. And so like nowadays you
Yeah.
see more of the, LaMelo will not be the point of attack defender for the Timberwolves. That'll be Jaden McDaniels and
Yep.
probably Jaden Clark or Anthony Edwards. So, you put your best perimeter defender, regardless of position, on the ball almost every
Yeah.
time nowadays.
Yeah. The positionless basketball on both sides. I hadn't really thought about that. It used to be you're the point guard, you're going to guard the other point guard. you know, Teams from high school up to the pros for many years, when that trend really broke, it'd be interesting to look back, because, yeah, it's positionless all around and it makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't put a LaMelo on a Kyrie. Good luck with that. That's not going to go well. In a few other matchups. Um, but vice versa, you probably aren't going to put Kyrie on LaMelo, maybe, depending upon who the other four are out there on the floor. So, and teams are much better at matching up their strengths to other teams' strengths and or weaknesses. So,
Yeah, I think you're probably
very
right. Like
different nowadays.
when the point guard started scoring more is probably when you saw that shift a little bit because,
Yeah.
traditionally in the olden days, like us and before us, the point guard came down and they probably made a pass to the wing or they did something, right? Like they moved the ball early. Now, point guards you're immediately in pick and roll action. And so you have to have a little bit different type of defender on a scoring point guard. So maybe Allen Iverson's era, right? Like they started putting bigger guards on him to try to slow him down because he wasn't going to pass the ball, but he was going to shoot it 30 times a night. So I
Yep.
don't know when exactly that happened, but I could see that as the position has evolved in primarily the scoring ways, who guards the other point guard is probably changed as well to match up with that.
I think it's very fascinating, watching today's game, especially in the pros, but it's filtered down as well. Um, how as a point guard getting into a set or getting into the action that you want to get into, your job is as much as anything is to force the defense to make the couple switches, and so the offense or the action can start even before half court, in setting a ball screen where it doesn't look like anything to us. He's just helping the guy get the ball down the floor. And yes, that can be the case. But sometimes it's also just to create the start of the mismatches with switches and then getting the looks and getting into the action. So it's pretty fascinating how it's not just get the ball past half court and then the old school get into your set or whatever play you're going to run. How it's almost 3/4 court, full court in some cases nowadays, and they're already running something even though you wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's always the case, but it is. When you hear the coaches talk, you realize, oh wow, there's a lot more to this.
Right. And there's a reason guys like Mike Conley get so much love from the Wolves coaching staff over the last few years because he was a guy that could do all of that, right? Like when he wasn't on the
Yeah,
floor, um, there was a noticeable difference in the
yeah,
shots
you
they
can tell.
took. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. So like characteristics, I had a couple I wrote down, um, just in terms of what I would look for in a point guard, like what makes an elite point guard. The first thing I wrote was
Yep.
toughness. I think the point guards, you got to play a lot of minutes. You got to you're getting bumped on screens all game long. The best point guards mix it up. They get to the paint. They take bodies there. So toughness was number one for me. Intelligence, we talked a little bit about this already, but like reading coverages, high IQ, like you have to kind of know
Yep.
you got to be playing chess, right? Like you're the next play. You're not this play. You're
Yep.
seeing what I want the defense to react so I can know I can get the next play, which is kind of coach on the floor. Like I think all coaches always want that guy on the
Yeah.
court who would be like, he knows all the plays. He knows where people are supposed to be. He knows our advantages. And then the other two I had were unselfishness and communicator. I mean, unselfishness is kind of obvious, but I think it's hard when you're the guy bringing the ball up the court and then you're taking early shots. That's really hard as a team for the
Yeah.
other guys. So like if you're able to get off the ball and then get it back later and be a scorer, that's one thing. And the communication piece is just kind of an extension of the coach on the floor, but like being able to just and this doesn't have to be like a vocal leader, like the yeller, the screamer. It's more of here's where we need to be. Here's where you should go. Here's what play we're running. Here's what we need to, just that kind of intelligence coach on the floor.
Yep.
But being able to verbalize it is important too.
Yeah, I mean, I think of just little things that you could spin off of the leadership, unselfishness, toughness, competitiveness, I would label as
Mm,
a part of toughness, where it's going to look different with different guys. Like many people wouldn't label a Luka tough, but you would label him competitive. And that's kind of how it shines through for a guy like him. Um, you can think of the guys like a Stockton that obviously unselfishness is maybe the first thing you think of with him, but he has a toughness in terms of taking charges,
setting
just being
screens.
pesky. Uh, yep, he set a lot of screens for a little guy. Absolutely, big part of their offense. Um, and so it comes through in different ways, obviously with different styles of play and different players and different characteristics with those players. And yeah, the leadership can be at times knowing when to take a back seat, knowing your role, um, and how huge that can be. Conley is a good example with the T Wolves lately. He knew his role. He's not going to be the leading scorer. That might be a rare night. Towards the end of the regular season when he's getting more minutes to let some of the other guys rest. But he knew otherwise. Is get him in the offense, get him in a set. Especially end of half, end of game. He was going to help us get a look that didn't look like we were just pounding the ball and forcing something up with what the young guys kind of probably got used to playing basketball that way growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're Ant or somebody with those abilities, it's too easy. But you can fall victim of your own strengths at times and not getting into the good sets. And that's where a good point guard absolutely is necessary.
When
So,
you think back to this is a while ago for us now, but when you think back to playing that position, I mean, you played so many minutes. I mean, there would be many games that you didn't come off the floor. Um, but what were like
we
the
had shorter games then,
we did, and we had the quarter breaks, which was nice.
8-minute
Yeah,
quarters.
all the scoring records should be balanced, prorated to
Not
match
happening
today.
there. Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
But like, what were the things other point guards did that you always or you thought, man, that is tough to defend, or I can't get to my spot because of the things that they're doing to me?
Guys that were so good at using their body, whether it's their offhand or their hip, whether it's just controlling the ball or going to the hoop. Some guys are just have that innate skill. Um, they talk about it all the time with Olivia Miles, and she is pretty fascinating to
Hmm.
watch. How well she keeps the ball away from her body, um, and and then her little kind of one-handed runner that nobody can get to because it is so far away from her body, and she's obviously developed that skill really well. Um, I mean, after that, nothing beats a killer crossover when some guys just have such tight handles. It was going to be a problem no matter
Hmm.
what. It was a debate. Do I just get up on him and foul him and play for 5 fouls? Because at least if it's a body on a body, you're not trying to track the ball and get fooled. If you give too much space, I always feel like you're in trouble. They're gonna pull up or they're gonna cross you
Hmm.
up. It's gonna be broken ankles in no time. So you just pick your poison with the guys that were lightning quick and really tight handles. And I would say it was sometimes not the guys you expected. You know, in our day, there wasn't as many great ball handlers, especially. No, the really good ones stood out, and there's definitely we'll have a list of them here, but it wasn't a transcended skill, um, even at the point guard
Hmm.
position. Believe it or not, kids just didn't grow up playing basketball all the time in all parts of the state. But I remember a few kids, they had no left hand, but they were still some of the trickiest guys to guard because what they did get good at was using their body, protecting the ball, and they were determined. They were going to get to the hoop, and they could. A lot of times, guys would adjust. They could go both ways with just the right hand. Um, and then, of course, a lefty. You don't see enough of them.
Yeah,
When you get across one, it's never
yeah,
normal,
yeah.
basically. So,
It,
God bless the lefties.
one of the things I forgot to mention, and I didn't put like quick physical skills down much because, like, obviously the quicker, stronger, that all helps. But one of the guys we'll talk about later was a master at this, still is. But pace. To me, point guard play isn't
Yes.
about
Yeah.
always quickness and physical attributes. It's about the pace at which you play. And I've been trying to teach my son this too about like it's going from.
The pace is something I never remember hearing about that. I never really remember being taught that.
Mhm.
And now I watch the kids play and they are masters of pace. That's the one of the things that I'm like, wow, it's incredible to watch and so fun, and it really is an art form that more kids have mastered nowadays absolutely than ever before. They have way tighter handles, but they have an incredible recognition of the power of pace, and it is pretty fun to watch.
Yeah. I
I
don't,
wish I would have learned that
yeah. Well,
than that.
but I think we thought about it differently. I don't think we talked about pace, but you talked about
Yeah.
space. You
Yep.
create space, and how do you create space?
Yep.
And I think that's part of it is just like we changed kind of the wording of it. But like if you weren't as quick as a guy, we grew up watching Greg Maddox pitch, right? And he didn't throw 98, 100 like Nolan Ryan, but he could change his speed
Yep.
so effectively. And I think that is what the equivalent to basketball is being able to, like Steph is great at it. And Steph, we'll talk about him too, but
Yeah.
Steph, right, when he's off the ball, it's walk, 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 burst through a screen to get the ball. It's, he's slow plays guys.
Yep.
He does the rope a dope, Muhammad Ali. Like that is
Yep.
such an underrated part of playing point guard that, and all positions really, but like point guard, it's really noticeable.
Yeah, I think it's part of the evolution of the game. I think in our era, it was, speed, 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 and kind of the obsession. with that, being able to get by a guy, being able to get to the hoop, um, that Allen Iverson type era, and seeing guys like that. And so that was such a big part of what every kid wanted to be able to do. And now you kind of see it, I would say, a little bit with the evolution of the 3-point
Mm-hmm.
shot. Everybody wanted to be Steph Curry. Everybody wanted to extend their range. Luka, name it, of any of these guys. Now, um, you've seen with, I'm blanking on him, Brunson,
Mm-hmm.
his ability. He is, to me, the master
Yeah.
of pace, and he's one of the guys that has brought the mid-range game back to, being a powerful tool. And so you kind of see the game coming back a little bit. And, if you're plus minus, if you're unstoppable, I don't care where it's from, you're not wasting possessions for your team, and you're taking high quality shots. It's not, a runner isn't a high quality shot for everybody, but for somebody like him, it
Yeah.
is. So
I'm glad you brought him
very
up because I
fascinating.
think there's so much good teaching that can be done watching him play versus like some of the flashier players because he isn't the most physically gifted guy out there. He's not the quickest and he's
No,
not the biggest. He uses his body well, what you talked
no,
about. He uses pace well, and his
amazing.
footwork is as good as anybody. Like it's just
We gets into the paint, he gets stopped. I've never seen a guy be so comfortable stopped and then be able to do 3 or 4 head fakes, pump fakes, and just get a sliver. And his little fadeaway in the lane. I remember, picking up the ball is the death of you being a small point
yeah,
guard, right? You
yeah.
get into the land of the trees, you pick up your dribble. Oh boy, right? But how good he is with his pivot foot and his pump fakes, he's either getting fouled or somebody's going to fall for one of those. Every once in a while, he has to get bailed out and kick it out. But it's not a problem for him because of his incredible body control, and he's so good at that shot. Um, and maybe it helps being a lefty a little bit too. It's just one of those things. It looks so different with him being of that size. Everybody else would never get that opportunity if you kept doing those
Mhm.
things. It wouldn't end well.
Well,
You would be on the bench
to be
for sure.
fair to us, when we played, there was like 8 hands in the paint because there was no spacing because nobody
True.
spread out to the 3 point line.
Yeah.
And
There's no
yeah, when
threats.
I watched some of
There's no
these,
worries.
I watched some of these clips of like the older players and stuff in the 80s, and everything was just so congested. And somehow they still would get to the basket once in
Compact.
a while. They could make passes through three
Yep.
guys, and it was crazy. But yeah, it's a definitely a
Now
different.
I would say the lacks of travel calls with your pivot foot also helps considerably. These guys are amazingly confident that they could use potentially 2 pivot foots.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking too, you couldn't release your pivot foot
Yep.
to go do a lay-in. Um, that's not a rule anymore.
Nope.
Um,
We have a gather
and so,
and we have a
yeah,
step through
it's a
that's allowed.
very different game. Yep.
Yeah. So
So they maybe that's why they look so much better.
yeah, yeah. One more thing, and then we'll get to our list. I want to ask you. We probably have never really talked about this, even though we played basketball together forever. I remember you being absolutely fearless about going to the paint and like trying to shoot over bigger guys. Like, you know, let's call
Yep.
you, let's call you 5'8". Uh, Going against a six
That's
three,
generous.
6'5".
Yeah.
I know, 6'5" guy, but like what's first of all mentality, but also like teaching wise, how did you approach that? Like and obviously using your body well, trying to draw fouls, but
Yep.
like I think there's a mentality to it that a lot of kids don't have today, and there's also like the technique and the skill because the finishing now that kids have is incredible around the rim.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I was not blessed with a crazy vertical, but it was decent enough. And I would say too, like you have to get really creative in finishing, and um, you have to not listen to what traditional coaching would tell you. And I think coaches are better about this and understanding and knowing. And there's less worry about certain things. But I knew if you're smaller, you're lighter, you're going to have a little better hang time than a big guy, and you're also you're the one in control. Um, and so I knew I could outlast them in the air. So there's a lot of times they're going to go for the initial block. They're salivating at the mouth, seeing a little guy come in, and oof, they can't wait. And so it's really easy to give the first move. They're going to go for that. They're committed. I would say the bigs are so much better, and you have so much longer players with better verticals now. And so you'd have to get in them and under them more often than not and kind of go around their arm because they will be able to take both the fake and the easy next move.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I could do that in our era, one fake, easy next move, and they would take the bait and their arms were gone and you have a look. Now I wouldn't say I was always the highest percentage though, and I had to be smarter and better at that because if you're a little guy and you can get to the rack, sure, but if you can't finish, it's a wasted possession. Um,
Right.
so it's tough not to be overconfident, and you need to be conscious of that. If you're not making them, you're not helping your team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so but you to really truly be a threat and not be somebody just dishing it off every time and they can play the pass, you do have to have ability to finish. And I would say you have to have a multitude of moves. You got to have the floater. You got to be using the glass oftentimes from weird angles. Kyrie, holy moly, when he's on a break and the way the position some of his layups hit the glass, but he knows how to use it and wild angles. Some of the best little guys. And it's just watching other guys that have unique finishes. Um, Everybody's got their own flair, and you probably want to have your own sauce too. Um, so people aren't used to defending it. Uh, but watching other guys and how they get away with their finishes is one of the best tools to have. And you know, somebody like Olivia Miles, I'm like, wow, I wouldn't be comfortable going up one hand like that. But it is a skill. And I would say what is really neat is the opposite foot finishes, how good kids
Yeah.
have gotten at that. And that is a serious weapon. And it is a lot harder to defend. And you're kind of squeezing yourself at better angles that I never was good at, never practiced that. So using the
Yeah.
rim obviously is your next best thing as a little guy,
Mm-hmm.
as your help. Nothing better than the rim essentially setting a pick for you with the high flyer bigs trying to block your shot.
Yeah.
So those are all
Yeah.
the things I think about. Um,
Yeah. I mean the quick finishes now that the kids do where they're kind of on your opposite foot, the Euro step, the floater, the angles off the glass have just gotten so much better over the years. But like at the end of the day, getting into somebody's body, not being afraid.
yep.
I think there is some
I
mental,
was never afraid of a big being. I was never afraid of a big being more physical.
yeah.
Um, I I don't want to. I hate to say it. It is what it is. Those are usually just tall, skinny guys. Um, there's rare exceptions, and those
Yeah.
guys are problems for everybody, right? Um, you think of some of the big, beefy power forwards. It's hard to get your body in them and to do anything. You're hitting a brick wall,
Yeah.
like a Karl Malone type.
Yeah.
That's gonna hurt. You're gonna have to be more crafty. You're gonna have to bait their aggressiveness and not go into his body, most likely. Um, but the other taller, skinnier ones, like um, like a Wembenyana, obviously you see. Oh, who's our Zion? Zion gave him fits, just going right into him. Um, and then the same thing with Chet. If they're lighter, they're movable. Um, you got to get into them. You got to shorten them up.
Yeah.
That's your only chance
Yeah.
because they're so long.
Yeah.
You're not going to beat them at that game.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sweet.
you got me going.
Yeah. Well, I told you, like, I don't think we had ever really kind of talked about that, but I remember watching it. I
Yeah.
remember like kind of the, how do they not call a foul there, like that kind of stuff, because you were not afraid to go at a 6'5" guy and attack his body, and
Yeah.
more often than not, it worked out. So, sweet. Well, let's get into our top five Minnesota born, raised point guards. There's the state's actually, as I was doing this project, I kind of realized there's a couple positions that we're really good at, and point guard is one of them. Um,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I I'll go through starting with my fifth down to the top, and then you can rebut or you can add to my list, and then we'll talk about maybe some like honorable mention
Perfect.
types. Um, Number five, I have Jalen Suggs. Again, like I don't know a prototypical point guard, but he definitely played point guard at Minnehaha Academy. Won a couple state titles, McDonald's All
Absolutely.
American. Gonzaga as a freshman, hit a half court shot in the Final Four, sent him to the national title game, top five pick in the NBA lottery. He's been in the league since. Turned into somewhat of a defensive stalwart on that Orlando team now. So that's kind of cool
Yeah.
to see. I mean, he's just a great athlete, awesome football player, obviously too. So just
Yep.
one of those freak athletes that I remember watching him in high school, being like, this dude's on another planet than everybody else he's playing against, and
Yep.
he's got the size, the strength, everything. Number four, I have Trey Jones, Apple Valley. Minnesota Mr. Basketball, 2 year standout at Duke. I think he
Yep.
was a third team All American at Duke. He's been in the league. He's not going anywhere. He's pretty productive, kind
Yep.
of starting, sometimes being a backup, depending on the team he's on. I think currently he's on the Bulls. Um, but his older brother,
I think so.
Tyus, I have at number three. Um, the reason I have Tyus above the other two, frankly, is the NCAA championship, the cojones to hit big
Yeah.
shots in that game against Wisconsin. He was the most outstanding player of the Final Four. Um, One of the
Yeah.
all-time great assist to turnover ratio guys, right? Like, absolutely will not turn it
Yeah.
over. He is the guy I was referencing when I was talking about pace, because he's not as athletic as Trey
Okay.
Jones, his brother.
Yep.
He's not as athletic as Jalen
Yep.
Suggs, obviously, either, but incredible pace that he plays the game at. Number two, I have Lindsay Whalen. This was not a men only competition.
Ah.
I have Lindsay Whalen.
Yep. Got me
I
there.
could probably argue that she should be one based on her career arc with being a Hall of Famer, four-time WNBA champion. Um, but I put her at number two because the guy I have at number one was like the first guy I remember being in high school being like, holy cow, like this is incredible to watch, and it's Khalid El-Amin from Minneapolis North,
Yep.
three-time state champion, McDonald's All-American, 99 national champion at UConn. Um, I looked up his stats at UConn. They don't blow you away. They're like 16 points a
Yeah.
game, 4 or 5 assists and rebounds, but he was like 5'10". And if you talk to any
Yep.
UConn fan, I've seen people on podcasts or on TV talk about UConn's early, like the first titles, and it's Khalid was the guy. Like everybody loved Khalid.
Yeah. He's the
Yeah,
leader.
and he was the guy.
Yep.
So just from watching him in high school, man, he's my number one. And okay, I'll leave it there. I got some other names I want to mention just because I loved watching them play. But
Sure.
any disagreements you have?
I have a couple different
Okay,
names, which is
yeah,
fun. You know, hey, it's on me. I should have thought of Lindsay Whalen, but
that's okay. It's okay.
she's deservedly on that list. My order is a little different. I also have with a couple different names. So, I mean, number one, I put Jalen Suggs for myself. I would say Tyus Jones. I mean, Khalid put point guards in Minnesota on the map. Then Tyus Jones was the next guy that you heard so high in the recruiting
Yeah,
rankings. And yeah, he would look different, something we hadn't seen in a long time. But Jalen Suggs to me was the one guy where like, no doubt NBA. Or I never remember seeing a kid like that at such a young age where you're like, yep, man among boys. If he gets any bigger, and he did, as you expected, um, through the years, he was already a good sized kid, so you saw it coming. Um, but he was just a no doubter, um, and proved it, still is. Um, I had Khalid El-Amin number two because he wasn't as much a no doubter only because of his size, and he was built different, but he was everything else of winner, all the way. Probably didn't get the correct look that he deserved in the pros. I think he played over in Europe for most of his career. Whenever he did, I believe, get a chance in the NBA, I think he played well. Just one of those guys that, if he was of the era of Brunson, might get more love. Just kind of, probably fell into, doesn't look like the right kind of small guy kind of thing.
Yeah.
But man, a winner all the way. I had Tyus at number three. I didn't have his brother, um, because number four, I work with a guy that went to St. Cloud Tech, and so I've remembered Nate Wolters.
Yeah.
He had his time in the NBA,
Yeah.
easily one of the best Minnesota high school point guards. He is one of those where it's like, is he really a point guard? But that's what they claimed he
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
6'3", 6'4" in high school. You know, could do anything and everything in a very underrated way. Number five, this is a name that just always I remember seeing in every record book of every statistic. Jake Sullivan.
Oh, see,
I believe he was a point guard. Was he Tartan?
he was Tartan. I have him in a
He is
different
littered
position.
in.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But that's
Was he labeled the shooting guard in his day?
I put him as a
Because
shooting
I swear
guard.
he has a number of assists.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Was he?
don't
Was
matter.
he with this
It's your
team?
list. It's your list.
Yeah. I don't even know. So I mean, and this is where I'm interested to hear from other listeners of people from your regions, your eras. There's so many good point guards out there. I think of a kid that went to DGF that played at Morehead State. I can picture the kid. I can't think of his name,
Jake
but he was
Driscoll.
littered in the record books for a while. Jake Driscoll. Was any of the brothers from Bram a point guard? Were they all shooting guards?
I
The
had
Dolmans.
no. They were
Isaiah
bigger.
was more of a.
Isaiah was more of a small forward. Noah ended up playing more of a 3-4.
Yep.
Um, and then I feel like there was one other brother, but I can't remember his name. But so not point guards. They actually had Josh Vaughn was the point guard there. I think he ended up playing at NDSU though.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. I think of all the teams from Patrick Henry and the pace that they played with.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, they had some killer point guards there. Then you have some of your small town kids. Is it the Broman brothers that were very, very high on scoring, but they're playing Class A? Take it for what it is.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, where some of these players ended up, what opportunities they got after high school. Sometimes it's very much the program that you're in, the coaching that you have to a degree.
Yeah.
So that's my list.
Nice. For the record, Nate Wolters was on my next group. Loved watching him play at South Dakota
Sure.
State. I'll never forget watching him and St. Cloud Tech play the Hopkins team that had Royce White and Marcus Williams, who ended up
5
playing.
D1 players, I believe
Yeah,
it was.
they were just insane. And
UCU
Tech,
football.
I think Tech was either up at half or it was like a 2-point game. They had taken the air out of the ball and they couldn't do anything about it
I
because
think
they
they
couldn't
played
take
the
it away
stall
from.
ball.
Yeah,
Yep.
Nate Wolters and
No
yeah,
shot
I mean,
clock.
had some big moments at SDSU. They went to the tournament, I think, twice in his career. So loved him. You talked about Patrick Henry. Al Nolan was on my, receiving votes list. Not the greatest offensive player, but talk about pressure defense. I mean, all Big Ten defender at the point guard
Setting
position.
the tone for what they're going to do.
Yeah. He was
Absolutely.
awesome. And then another good defender, Jordair Jet from St. Bernard's. I don't know if you remember that name. Played with Trevor Mbakwe for a while.
I do
Um,
remember the name.
and then he went to St.
Yeah.
Louis, and he was the uh, was it the Atlantic 10? I forget which conference they were in at the time, but he was the player of the year in that conference. Big, physical, tough
Oh yeah.
guard.
Yeah.
And
He
then
was St. Louis.
a couple
Would
other
have been
names
in the
just
Rick
came to mind.
Majerus days a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yep. A couple other guys that came to
Yeah.
mind. Jordan Taylor from Benilde played at Wisconsin. And then since we brought
Yeah.
up Wisconsin, I suppose I should mention Brad Davidson. I mean, he's, one of the
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
players, but
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's lots
Even if you
more.
play for the Badgers, you have to
Yeah,
give them some love.
exactly. And
You
now
know what?
coaching.
Making this list definitely. Yeah, making this list definitely. I'm like, oh, it's a shame. No Gophers. On this list. Not necessarily kids even from Minnesota, but even if it's hard to think of a ton of Gopher point guards that just stand out enough. I
Yeah.
mean, you mentioned Al Nolan, um, but I don't know if that's
He-
just coincidence or what. But
Well, I think,
besides
mul-
Lindsey,
you got multiple, like, I mean, Suggs, Jones, both Jones brothers, they're going to the premier programs, right? Like that's going to be tough.
absolutely,
There was a
yep,
time where the Gophers might get the top player in the state, but it doesn't seem like we've been able to do that with point guards. Now we'll see. There's a few more
no,
coming in the next few years, so there's opportunities there. But the year that the Gophers missed out on Davison, they also missed out on point guard McKinley Wright out of Champlin Park, who went to
I
Colorado
chipped
and
him.
was fantastic. So,
Yeah,
that's just a recruiting miss on the staff's part at that time. Yeah, in Greater Minnesota, I had a hard time kind of finding some, players who made major impacts beyond just high school. Obviously, Walters would be one of them, but um,
in high school.
lot of D2 guys that had great careers. Like definitely not gonna
Yeah,
downplay that, but there's like the Dave Yeager, Blaine Yeager from Staples Motley, Tyden Storson from Pelican Rapids, like awesome
yep.
D2 players. And there's probably more. So yes, like you said, I'm sure people will let us know who we missed, how bad we missed, how come we didn't
I
mention.
think about some of the story programs or the teams that had multiple state tournament runs in a row. Oftentimes there was some really good point guards mixed in.
Yeah,
So yeah, I would love to hear the
yeah,
feedback.
yeah. And just know that we're not discounting anyone else's efforts. This is just a fun list. Let's move to
Yep.
all-time point guards. So we don't have to break down everything, but just this one was tougher for me. I'll be honest. Like I was kind of thinking, like you and I were chatted, like is Steph Curry considered a point guard? Um, Magic Johnson's obviously, but like we were talking about positionless
Yeah.
basketball. Was I mean a 6'9" point guard? Like that's crazy. But that's the Lakers were doing that. So
Yeah.
Magic was doing this stuff way
Yep.
before anybody else. So my top five: Magic Johnson, Steph Curry, the Big O, Oscar Robertson. I almost forgot about him being a point guard, 6'5". Then I go with a couple little
Yep.
guys, and I go Isaiah Thomas and John Stockton for my top five point guards of all time. Tell me I'm wrong. What did I miss?
I didn't have Oscar Robinson. I completely blanked on him. Um, Isaiah Thomas, he was fun to watch. He felt like a guy so before his time in many ways, even though there's guys like a Kyrie doing things that nobody ever thought of in those days. I had Magic Johnson. Um, I honestly didn't put an order here. Um, Jason Kidd
Ah,
to me
yeah,
um, is somebody in the top five. He was one of my favorite players. He to me is a guy that embodies the floor general, the unselfishness, just the winning. The guy just won. Was not the best shooter, so very different than some of these other guys on here. In which he played in more of a shooting era. I completely blanked on Stockton. I think you can't do a list without him in the top five. Um, where he fits to me almost doesn't matter. Steph Curry, for this purpose, I put him as a point guard, and that guy changed the game. Um, so then I think of guys quickly coming up through the ranks. When you mentioned the T-Wolves playing the Thunder coming up here, I can't stand to say it, but Shea is putting himself in the conversation.
Yeah.
He's he's changing the way we want to view the game. He's changing the way we want the game officiated. If you're that good, um, things like that happen, whether
Mm-hmm.
whether the rest of us like it or not.
Yeah.
Um, and then Luca is, when you talk about pace, a guy that's 6'7" and stuck to the ground, but can do what he can do. Obviously, being big does help getting your shot off, but his ability of pace and balance. And then if you put Brunson as a point guard, if you throw him in that category, these are Luka, Kyrie, Brunson. Those are three guys I say are making their way into the top five, kind of a new wave of players
Okay.
that arguably are doing things previous generations just never did. It wasn't part of the game, the way these guys play.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I thought
that's my
about Shea.
spitballing for the.
I
Oh,
didn't think about Luca though. I guess I never consider him a point guard, but I don't know what position I would consider him to be honest. So that's interesting. I didn't
he's
think
bringing the
about
ball
that.
up. He's
He
getting them in the
does.
offense. He is
He,
the
I was
offense.
gonna say,
Um,
what offense is he initiating exactly?
just give me the ball and watch me work.
Watch me
Um,
dance and step back three.
I think of him in some ways as a much bigger, slower Jason Kidd that can shoot better and wants to shoot more. I know that sounds weird, but the way backing guys down, Jason Kidd was much more um, pace and lobs and this and that,
Yeah.
but Luca is an offense in himself, good or bad. Um, but he sets people up. Um, he's going to command so much attention. It's different. It's very different.
Yeah.
But he is ball heavy, like more point guards, scoring type point guards of today's era. I
Yeah.
mean, Gilgeous, he can play off the ball, but he's best with the ball in his hands and starting the action and forcing the issue.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're right. Like Luca, he's a great passer. Like there's no doubt about it. He's a great
yeah,
passer. He's big. Biggest one, well, outside of
sees
Magic,
the
probably.
floor really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And Stockton, you can't leave him off because he's the all-time leader in assists and steals. And like I said earlier,
Yep,
one of the best
yep,
screeners ever. Tough as nails, hit big shots. Probably should have, outside of Jordan and the Bulls, probably would have had an NBA title. I think the downside with Stockton is like
yep,
he was never probably considered the best player on his team, which is crazy to say that.
for sure.
So that might be a knock on him.
So guys like Stockton, they're very interesting. I would love to see, knowing how successful his teams are, I would love to see his plus minus because me being an undersized guy, I always think, yes, I could get a lot of steals, but guys like him, were they really good defenders, or were they, the teams the guy that teams hunted for matchup exploitation? But I just don't remember as much from his era. But I would be really curious to see if he could impact the game enough in his other ways to make up for ways in which, and maybe he was a really great defender, even besides just getting steals. I'd be really.
I'm not sure on plus minus. Um, he
Yeah.
he played 19 years, and he played every game in 16 of those years. That's crazy.
And they
That's the
won
stuff
like
you don't.
50 some games, probably.
Yeah, I mean
Lord knows
they're
how many of
deep
those
playoff
years.
runs
So the
from.
consistency is
Yeah,
unbelievable. Chances are he was more than a plus defender with the amount of success that they had. But I'm always kind of curious with some of those guys. We
yeah,
didn't that wasn't so much a part of uh, statistics or
Right.
spoken of in terms of um, coaching and judging players like it is today.
Yeah. I'm not here to be the John Stockton advocate or anything, but just I'm just like looking at his
Yep.
stats and it kind of blows me away. In an era where three-point shooting wasn't a big deal, he shot over 40% in 89, 90, 91, 92, and then from 94 to 98, every year he was over 42%. So I mean, he was like a pretty elite three-point shooter. Now if he played today, instead of taking 2 or 3 a game, he'd be taking 5 or 6. All of a sudden, his points per game went from 17 to probably 25 in today's era. So it's always hard to compare shooting points just the way it is. A couple other guys I have on my list, like it's really hard to compare, but Bob Cousy, Celtics point
Yep.
guard. But I looked at his stats and he only shot 37% from the field. So you're like, I don't know what that
Yeah.
compares to today, but talking to the old guys, they would probably say him. And then a couple other guys I had, Chris Paul and Steve Nash. We haven't even talked about,
Yeah.
but they kind of,
Yeah.
Nash, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash era flowed into the Chris Paul, Steph Curry era. But I mean, Nash was a two-time MVP. Never really had those guys. To me, don't make the list just because they never were the leaders on a team that went to
Yeah.
the finals or won finals or anything like that. But I mean, obviously, point guard and Steve Nash was insane and
I feel like
stuff. So had to
Nash
mention those
was,
guys.
yeah, Nash felt like a little more of the introduction of scoring part point guard a little bit further along in his career, but so consistent. And that Chris Paul, you forget about him, man. He's just another guy that felt like a winner. Like when he went to Oklahoma City and they were making a run, you know, after the level of success he had with the Clippers, and just seemed like anywhere he was going to go for a while, that team was going to compete. Kyle Lowry, um, you know, not somebody that really is going to make it on many lists, but it wasn't obviously just him with the Raptors, but man, that guy was just a winner. Um, and he set the tone for sure for their attitude. Um, without a guy like him, I don't think like a guy that believes you can win on a team like that, I don't think they win a title. So just kind of a great example of really what you'd hope for in a point guard.
Yeah, it's usually pretty easy to remember. Like if you think of great teams, all-time great teams, you can remember the point guards, even if they're not the main players. Like that's how you could still remember Steve Kerr on the Bulls and B.J. Armstrong, and
Yep.
then like Kenny Smith with the Rockets. He wasn't probably their top two player
Yeah.
on that team with Olajuwon and the other guys, but like it's just so important and it matters. Yeah. Any closing thoughts on as we've gone through our lists?
I mean, it's so hard to not include so many great players. Um, there's a lot of guys I would say, are fringe guys of really good teams, and then some really good players that we haven't even mentioned here. You start to go through every championship team, and it's pretty rare to find one. We talked about a few teams here. The teams led by a Jordan, a Kobe, a Giannis, and the list can kind of go on and on. Olajuwon, non-point guard teams that guys winning multiple MVPs. What do we do about LeBron James? Is he a point guard for this discussion, or as we take certain years where he's point guard?
I would say not a point guard. All right, that'll do it for the first in a 5-part series on the positions, the greatness at the position, covering what makes great players at each position in basketball, the top 5 players at that position from Minnesota, and the top 5 of all time. Thanks to my buddy Eric, my point guard growing up in high school, well, elementary through high school. Appreciate him being on the podcast today to break down point guards. Appreciate you listening. Follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and make sure you follow on social media, Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, TikTok, wherever, YouTube. We'd love to hear the comments on what you think your top 5 point guards are from Minnesota and all time. Who'd we miss? Who'd we leave out? who should be in the discussion. Again, this is just for fun. We're not trying to create a bunch of controversy. Just love talking about great players in the game of basketball. I'm your host, Steve Hartman. This has been the Splash City Basketball Podcast.
Back in that bag again.